Hi, and welcome to The Seeker
and The Skeptic.
I'm Kat, and I'm the flaky, unpredictable, maybe a bit irrational Seeker.
And I'm Rebecca. I'll be your sarcastic, grumpy, close-minded, skeptical host. Or maybe we should just be ourselves.
Sounds good to me. This podcast is going to dive deep into the controversial topics that some may call New Age, or woo-woo, or just plain foolish.
And hopefully look at them with a skeptical but open-minded approach that will encourage understanding and acceptance from both the skeptics
and the seekers. Hello, listeners. So today we're doing something a little bit different. So this is the idea that we're going to do mini episodes taking questions from you. You can do this by tweeting us or Instagramming us. We are at Seeker Skeptic. You can also send an email to hello@seekerandskeptic.com with any of your questions about all of the weird stuff that we talk about and any other weird things that you want to bring up. So my question for Rebecca today is, tell me about the placebo effect. I know you tell me off a lot about this, so can you debunk any myths surrounding the placebo effect?
Oh my god, I'm just shaking my head because I know this is the sort of topic that is just super controversial or get me in trouble, not just with seekers but with skeptics. So to get an idea of like what people generally think about the placebo effect, can you just tell me off the top of your head, what did you think the placebo effect was before we started having conversations?
Right, so I'm not going to be the best at explaining this, but I thought you could take like a sugar pill, and if you were under the impression that this could help you get rid of your headache or whatever, you could take that sugar pill and it would have the same effect as long as you believed that it would, help your headache. It's like almost your belief in its working somehow relieves the symptoms.
Yeah, I think that's generally what people believe. I've heard people say it's mind over matter. Sure. And a lot of people say, you give someone something that they think is medicine and it will make them heal faster. It will make tumours disappear faster. You use the headache as an example, but lots of people will talk about things like that can be objectively measured, like tumours or healing bones or anything. It seems to be a very, very popular opinion. So just to get started, a placebo is something that is used in medical research, as we all know. And the idea is to make something that looks like real medicine or treatment to act as a control. So if you were doing a study, you would give one group of people medicine and the other group a placebo that looks as close to the real medicine as possible, so they don't know who's got what. The idea is to eliminate bias in a medical research study. So not just for the individuals who are consuming the treatment or medicine, whatever it is, but also for the researchers. And that's what a double-blinded study would be. So the researcher themselves wouldn't know whether they were giving someone the placebo or actual medicine. It's a really clever little technique. I don't know when it was invented, but that's where placebos come from. And then the difference between the outcomes of people given placebo and people given nothing, because often in a study trial you'll have the people given medicine, people given placebos, and the people given nothing. The difference between the people who are given placebos and the people giving literally nothing, that's what we call the placebo effect. Right. So any improvement in their symptoms, in their illnesses, well, that's debatable, but that is what we call the placebo effect. So people notice this difference, and they try to figure out what it is by running studies on testing the actual placebos. And early on, there were some really exciting trials that showed people getting better when they were taking placebos. So a really famous one is about gastric ulcers. And they found that the people taking placebos, they would measure the size of the ulcer, then they would give people either nothing or a placebo, and people given the placebo are getting better faster and their ulcers are getting smaller, even though they've just been given a placebo, which has no active ingredient in it. It's got no medicine in. Really exciting, and people got very excited about placebo effect, which is why people have these beliefs about it today. But more recently, people have been combing back through that literature and looking at it. And what they find is when you see those really impressive reductions, for example, in gastric ulcers, but also many other things, reductions of symptoms, objectively measured symptoms such as ulcers, the better controlled the study is, the smaller the effect. And that's really interesting for skeptics because you see this all across the field of paranormal research. So we'll be like, wow, it's amazing. That person can guess what's in that sealed envelope, like over the other side of the room, and they must be telekinetic or whatever, psi research. But then when a magician does the same study, or the same study is done with a team of scientists who are using better controls, the effect disappears. And it disappears or it diminishes dramatically because all the things that could have contributed to it are being controlled. So all those early studies, and that's the other thing, they're early. So our testing, whatever, the way we test medicine has got better over the years. And the more stricter and better the controls are enforced, the smaller the effect. So that's kind of suspicious. And has now most people think that those objective things, bones mending, ulcers getting smaller, all those sort of things, that is not caused by placebo. It's not caused by mind over matter. But what placebo is quite impressive at is making people report that they feel better. And this is, again, it's very confusing because the difference between being better, i.e. objective symptoms diminishing, objective measurable things diminishing, symptoms getting better, and reporting that you're feeling better, all get sort of smushed into one category. Sure. So there have been some well-controlled studies on, more recent well-controlled studies on the placebo effect. And a really good example, actually, that illustrates this point really well is this guy called Ted Kapchuk. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And he did a trial on placebos in asthma. And he gave people real asthma medicine, placebo asthma medicine, and no asthma medicine. And he measured how much air they expel from their lungs. So that's testing lung capacity. That's an objective measure. And he tested how they reported their symptoms. So how breathless are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever? I can't remember the details. As we said, these are just our casual, chatty type of episodes. So we won't have all the details for everything. Not that we ever do. Anyway, the point is, this guy found that the lung capacity didn't change, but people were reporting that their symptoms were better, which illustrates really nicely the difference between people saying they're feeling better and people actually being better.
Right, here's my thing, which is if you report that you're feeling better, who gives a rat's ass that, like, you might not technically be better? I mean, that's what, for me, means that the placebo effect, it's still real for things that are based around your perception of the pain or discomfort.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to who gives a rat's ass is the person having an asthma attack.
Sure. Because
if this rumour's going around that placebos are just as effective as asthma medication,
right,
and you give someone a placebo asthma inhaler,
yeah,
they might feel better, but they may still die of an asthma attack, right, because actually their lungs are still getting constricted. Yeah. I don't know how asthma works, but whatever the fuck goes on there, that's still happening. So it's really important to differentiate between people reporting they feel better and people actually being better. Yeah. But you're right, of course. And that's what's so interesting about this whole thing, because our symptoms aren't just like facts about the world. They're subjective and we experience them differently at different times. I always think of tattoos. I've got loads of tattoos. I've sat for hours for tattoos and they're very painful. But because I'm sitting there chatting to my tattooer and we've got music on and I know what they're doing and I know it's safe and I know it's hygienic, I know it's going to end, I know at any moment I can say, oh, I need a break, and they'll stop. Imagine just waking up and having the pain equivalent to the pain of a tattoo just in the middle of the night for no reason. Terrifying. Yeah. So much worse. So particularly for pain, those sort of subjective things, if you can alter those subjective things, that's really important. Yeah. But the thing is, there are lots of other explanations. So if we have this situation where we give someone 2 pills, or we give someone a placebo and nothing, and one person gets better and one person doesn't, and you think, well, why? There must be the placebo effect. The placebo must have done something. Mm. And this is why when I was talking about the controls, this is what this is all about, because there's lots of other things that have that effect. Yeah. So if I give you the placebo pill and then you come back the next day and I've got my little piece of paper and I'm writing up how you feel, I'm like, so are you feeling better now?
Yes.
Exactly. Whereas if I asked you in a different tone, you might give me a different response. There's a lot going in there. Yeah. Like, and that's a very small thing, but if you're doing studies of thousands of people, they get blown out. If you had just a cheerful demeanor, or an encouraging demeanor, a doctor or a researcher who expected you to be getting better.
Wow, even that tiny little thing.
Yeah, we talked about this in our UFO episode, how the way we ask questions can bias the responses we get.
Sure.
And that's something that better controlled studies won't suffer from so much, but it's still a problem in scientific research or medical research in general. So that's kind of goes to the point of how we try and please people, even subconsciously. You're trying to give people the answers that they want. And the doctor, so that's a kind of patient misreport, patient bias. Not that they're doing it on purpose, just it's something humans do to please each other. And then the doctor, who's expecting a certain response, he will inadvertently, or she will inadvertently encourage or discourage certain responses. And that shouldn't be a problem in a double-blind trials, but many of them aren't. The other thing is that both or either could be suffering from confirmation bias. So if your doctor expects you to get better, they'll ask you questions about symptoms diminishing instead of about symptoms increasing or staying the same, or they'll just listen to you talk about your symptoms and they'll note down the ones that conform to their expectations. Confirmation bias is a human problem, not just for, all the paranormal stuff we talk about, but even in these sort of situations.
And we've seen it in our own reporting of a certain event, we'll shape it to what our preconceived idea is.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's another reason why it could seem like someone's getting better. There's regression to the mean, which basically means, illnesses wax and wane.
We get better, yeah.
Yeah. So especially with the sort of things that are reportedly very good, that placebo has a high effect in, things like chronic conditions. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but you might, for example, period pain. Some months it's better, some months it's worse.
Well, yeah, I've been experimenting this personally with homeopathy and period pain, and 2 out of 2 months so far, the homeopathy seems to have worked.
But it's really hard to tell.
Of course. And, this is something that, there are so many variables and you have to test it over so long. And it's like, how could you ever say? But at the same time, I'm superstitious about it. I'm like, well, I'm going to take it just in case.
Yeah, I think that's what people generally... that's the reason a lot of people use homeopathy, for example. And they're not even sure that it works, but it's just like, well, it can't hurt.
Yeah. But
it does put money in the pockets of people who are selling homeopathy, which if you think homeopathy is a scam, that sucks. So there's a guy, Mike Hall, from Most Side Skeptics, and I suggest anyone who wants to actually get the data on this subject looks it up. Or you could just read the Wikipedia page. I'm telling you nothing that controversial, really. It's all there. But he likes to call them the placebo effects, plural, because there's so many different things that could explain this. And if we want the mind over matter explanation, we first have to rule out all these boring ones.
Right.
Because we know they happen.
Yeah.
And we know they're real. And they haven't been ruled out.
Fair.
So the thing is, and the reason why I said I was hesitant to talk about it, because it's controversial, is skeptics love the placebo effect.
Oh, of course.
They love it. There are some of you probably have already turned off because you're like, oh, how dare she
attack the placebo.
Yeah, our beloved placebo effect. The reason why they love it is, there's many reasons why they love it, but one of them is a science writer called Ben Goldacre, who wrote a book called Bad Science. It's a great book, yeah, and he's a great science communicator. But the way he represented the placebo effect is very much in your sort of folk understanding of it. Yeah, and he used the study on gastric ulcers, I think, in that book, and represented it as if...
Are you sure he wasn't saying that was bad science?
No.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of skeptics have read this and love it. He talks particularly about a study on keyhole knee surgery, where, you go in through a tiny little hole and mess around in people's knees. And he says that the keyhole knee surgery, when they're actually doing whatever they're supposed to do in the knee, versus someone just making a hole in someone's knee and fishing around a bit and coming out and not really doing anything, so that would be the placebo, they're the same. So therefore the placebo works. The other explanation, of course, is that keyhole knee surgery is bullshit, which it pretty much is. That's how you do experiments, right? If it doesn't measure any better than the placebo, then it's not worth doing either. So I don't know exactly what's going on for Ben Goldacre. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding or whatever, but he represents it as if it's a kind of mind over matter thing, and he doesn't differentiate clearly, at least people who read him don't understand, that it's about subjective reported improvements, not objective getting better.
Yeah.
So the other reason we love it it offers a really tidy explanation for everything that we hate as skeptics. So when someone says, I took homeopathy and I feel better, you can say, well, placebo effect.
Right, but like what I don't understand there is, so I'm with you on this, but I'm amazed that skeptics, like, what is their explanation that we are literally like believing ourselves to be better? Because I get it when like seekers and believers, when we might say, oh, you know, kind of use the power of the mind, and it's you might as well take a placebo pill because our mind is so powerful that we can just believe ourselves better. But I can't imagine skeptics are thinking the same thing. So what the hell?
I really don't know. I haven't got to the bottom of it, really. All I know is they get very defensive. This has come up in when I've done talks to a group of skeptics. And in the Q&A, in my talk, I'll be talking about, you know, the downsides of alternative medicine. That's one of the subjects I cover. And in the Q&A, someone will be like, oh, but isn't it fine because of the placebo effect? And I start saying what I've just said here. And I've had people stand up and contradict me and go, well, actually, I'm a doctor and I know the placebo effect is very powerful. And I think this is one of the problems. Like, you learn something, maybe you learn it in medical school, you learn it from Ben Goldacre's book, and then you don't go back and reassess that knowledge, which is terrible as skeptics. Because as skeptics, we should be constantly reassessing and checking ourselves and being humble about the amount of information we have and whether we're right or not.
I mean, I'd say everyone should be looking at their beliefs, even if it's like, I believe in fairies, like keep looking at that. And,
yeah,
you know,
but skeptics are going around claiming to do that.
Got the,
So it's like, it's a bit unforgivable, really, in the case of skeptics. Although not everyone has the time to keep up with all the most recent medical research and stuff. But if you're going to go on about how you think critically about everything, then you have to think critically about the classic skeptic beliefs, as well as the beliefs of your friend who believes in, I don't know, astrology, for example. It's just a bit unfair. I think so it offers that tidy explanation. You're able to just brush away homeopathy as placebo. It makes us sound clever, especially back in the day when, I mean, now everyone knows what the placebo effect is or thinks they do. But back in the day, do you remember the band Placebo in the 90s? Yeah, I was like, that's a really cool medical word that no one really knows what it means. That was in the 90s. So when you throw away around the word placebo, you sound clever.
Yeah.
Again, maybe not so much now. Maybe the way to sound clever now is to say, I listened to a skeptic podcast where this woman explained. I don't know. And also, I think this comes up when we talk about paranormal things. In fact, I was thinking about this with reference to UFOs, which we've been talking about recently. It's kind of a false compromise between homeopathy is magic and it's nothing. So skeptics believe it's nothing. Some people believe, I mean, magic, I don't know let's just say magic. Maybe that's a bit dismissive, but let's just say. You don't want to say, okay, you don't want to agree with them and say, yes, homeopathy is magic. But it seems like a bit mean to say it's nothing. So you just go right down the middle and say it's the placebo effect, and then everyone's happy.
Interesting. Yeah, it is like a convenient falsity.
It's like a nice way to end a conversation. And I think this is important because skeptics use it to defend alternative medicine, which is weird for skeptics, but they'll say, oh, go on, let them have their placebos, which I think is really condescending. Because if I have someone in my life, I want to be honest with them. I don't want to be like, oh, you know, let them do whatever nonsense they want. That's a horrible attitude to have to other people. And also they use it to defend not going hard, like not confronting people, which is really convenient if you don't like confrontation. I hate confrontations. I always look for a way to weasel out of a confrontation, but I know that some confrontations are necessary. And if someone I care about is taking something that I think is a placebo when they need real medicine, I should say that and not hold back.
I've experienced this. She will say it.
And the other thing is they're being used. So I saw a study that said 97% of UK GPs have prescribed impure placebos. So that's a medicine with an active ingredient not usually prescribed for that ailment. 97%. And then 10% have prescribed pure placebos, which is like a sugar pill. It has literally no active ingredient.
Whoa.
Think about the amount of people who come in with a cold. We know colds can't be treated with antibiotics, but the doctor wants them to go away. So they give them antibiotics. Now we have a problem with antibiotic resistance.
We do, yeah. Completely.
And generally, I think, like, as a medical professional, there's an ethical problem with giving people sugar pills. Even, like...
well, it's just lying.
Yeah, exactly. I think that really worries me. So... yeah, I think slowly this is trickling into the skeptic movement, and Mike Hall is the big guy who's talking about it and making a difference. But it's not happening fast enough, and I think the reason it's not happening fast enough is because we skeptics are really good at like picking apart other people's bullshit, but we're not very good at looking at our own.
Wow, interesting. Nicely said. I'd like to have a list of things that placebo, like sugar pills and stuff, could be used for, right? So I would put headaches in that category. I'd put period pain in that category. What else? Like, there are a bunch of things, even like a cold. You could still use this feeling better thing from taking a pill for those specific things. I think like it's just really important not to throw that out, because I think that is useful.
Well, especially pain things.
Pain things, that's what I mean.
Yeah, because like pain is so subjective.
Yeah. Like
but
a non-life-threatening pain thing. Fine.
If it's just about cheering yourself up,
yeah,
then why not just watch a fun movie or
even
something?
Even chocolate. Like, if I think that chocolate will improve my mood, I don't think it's going to have like a noticeable effect. I mean, maybe it does. I guess it probably does, but I'm probably exaggerating it. That's what I mean. And I think that's not a bad thing.
I like to treat myself to those fancy, in fact, I'm drinking one right now because I've got a bit of a cold. You can probably hear it in my voice. Those expensive smoothies, like, that are made not in my own blender, but by Marks and Spencer's or Waitrose. This doesn't mean anything to anyone who's not in the UK, but trust me, they're expensive shops. So I treat myself to one of those when I've got a cold. And I know that it's not going to make any difference, really. Right. But it's that feeling of like, oh, I'm going to have something nice because I'm feeling a bit rough, and it feels all natural and healthy.
Yeah.
But we all still have, like, even as a skeptic, I have those biases. But it's just that distinction. Like, and I just can't hammer that home enough between reporting subjective symptoms versus actual objective getting better. Mm-hmm. Placebo effect doesn't do anything for objective getting better, but it can make you say you feel better.
Nicely done. Well, I don't have any more questions about that. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Let's hope no one else does, because it's outside my area of expertise. I'm not a medical scientist. I'm saying the research other people have gathered. Right.
But at any time, we are going to be giving out our email address. So if you have any questions just that you want us to answer on the show, that's hello@seekerandskeptic.com, and find us on Twitter and Instagram @seekerskeptic. Thanks for listening. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know with a tweet or an email. We'd really love to hear about your experiences.
Yes, please tell us what we got wrong. You can email us at hello@seekerandskeptic.com and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @seekerskeptic.
You'll find the show notes for this and every episode at seekerandskeptic.com.
And if you're interested, you can find my skeptically themed comics at rebeccaonpaper.com, or follow me on Twitter @RebeccaOnPaper.
And I'm at yoga_astrology on Twitter. And you can find me exploring the intersection of yoga and astrology at yogaandastrology.com.
If you liked what you heard and fancy supporting the show and spreading the word, we'd really appreciate a rating and review in the Apple Podcast Store or wherever you're listening.
Or just tell somebody you know about the show. Thanks for listening.